we're a bit early.
Okay, here we go. Week 16, welcome to our virtual wine tastings from the Farm Shed East Coast Wine Centre on the coast in Tasmania. We started 16 weeks ago at the most southern vineyard in the region. That was Brim Creek down at Marion Bay. Gradually we've been working our way up the east coast. We're sort of in the middle at the moment, but we're going to jump around a bit this week because we've got two of our smallest producers to talk to you about. So we're around the Freycinet area at the moment. Last week we featured the iconic Freycinet vineyard, one of the most known and most celebrated vineyards. But a couple of really little ones this week. And then we're going to head up as far as St Helens and finish off with Priory Ridge in 4 weeks' time. So,
just a little, while we're waiting for everyone else to join us. Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Just a little bit of information about, Subi just mentioned St Helens. Well, St Helens has just been voted the top tourist town in Tasmania. Out of all the towns. So congratulations everyone in St Helens, a job well done.
Yeah.
Of course we on the East Coast all own St Helens because we're all part of the East Coast. So in a different sort of a way we're all in this together.
Yeah, it just needs the tourists back. We look forward to that. But meanwhile there's lots of Tasmanians travelling around the state. We just had a little trip ourselves over to Cradle Mountain. So we've been in the snow and then come back to the sunny East Coast today.
Yes. And thank you, Get Freighted. Yes, I've been back for the last 2 weeks. I spent a couple of weeks in hotel quarantine in Hobart and then came back to Bicheno. So, yeah.
All right.
The team's back.
Indeed. Thanks for joining, everybody. We'll get going. It's now 5 o'clock. So what we're going to do this week is we're going to introduce you to a couple of the smaller producers, as I said, but we're also going to feature two not so well-known grape varieties, which are often referred to as ugly ducks. And we're going to show you how in the right hands and the right year, an ugly duckling can turn into a beautiful black swan. So, first up, Helen.
Okay, first up, we're doing at Sterling Heights. Sterling Heights Vineyard is up just outside of St Helens. Do you want to tell us something about Sterling Heights?
I will. Yeah. Actually, they're an interesting vineyard. They started in 1987 in the Tamar Valley, the West Tamar. Back in those days, they were pretty big. Alan Rousseau, who we've talked about before, used to make their wines. But they had their first vintage in 1992. And after 12 vintages up there, they decided that it was time to semi-retire. So they packed up, moved to St Helens, became the first vineyard and winery in the Bay of Fires bioregion, and took a few vines with them which they put in the ground. Not sure what they thought was going to happen, but the vines grew. So they started making wine themselves. Since those days, Jeff and Jenny Wells has discovered that his ancestors were actually German winemakers with connections to, I think, the Mur Valley in Germany. So he figures he'll be making wine until that day comes because he can't help it. It's in his genes.
Yes, but the first wine that we're tasting today, it's a Reserve Gamay. It's a 2015 Reserve Gamay. You don't see very many Gamays around at all. And there's a couple in Tasmania, but not very many at all. The Gamay grape is a grape that came out of the Beaujolais area in Burgundy in France. It was... it originated in Germany.
In a village called Gamay in the 1360s. So it's a grape that's been around for an awfully long time. It's easier to grow than Pinot, so it's very vigorous growing.
It's a much harsher grape than the elegant Pinot Noir. So a lot of the Gamays are actually mixed with the Pinot with a Pinot Noir grape to make it a blended wine, make it a lot softer to drink. Anyway,
and it really comes into its own, I think, with a bit of aging.
It does. And Jeff only puts out a Reserve Gamay when he's had a good year. So
a really exceptional year.
And it does need a little bit of aging. So I don't know if he's got any vintages laid down, but he certainly doesn't make it every year. He says that the sort of flavours that you get from it are sour cherries, black pepper, dried berry, and fresh cut stone and chalk. I'm not quite sure about that.
I wasn't sure about that either, but I always like a sour cherry.
That's right.
Anyway, this vintage is from 2015, so it has got a bit of age.
And the other thing about this vintage, and it's something that Jeff really wanted to do, and that is it's been sealed with a cork. And these days you see very few wines that are still using a cork as a bottle seal. And there's people that say that it's better with a cork, and other people say that the Stelvin cap, which is the aluminium cap, screw cap, is better, is just as good, if not better, because you get very little taint in the wine with a Stelvin cap. But with reserve sort of full-bodied wines that you want to age, the cork allows that to happen, because it just allows for you need to lay it down, but it allows for that aging process.
Yeah, I remember when that whole debate started in Australia, and some of the really prestigious wineries started to put Stelvin caps on to try to get that message across. And of course, Australians are early adopters. We adapt and really change quite quickly. Which might surprise some, but it's true. It's certainly true around food. We've embraced multicultural foods faster and more comprehensively than any other country in the world. So apparently
there's a lot of wine still being exported to America. You might be able to tell us something about this, Gefrated. A lot more wine exported to America that still have corks in it,
because
but
those Americans
they have Stelvin caps for the Australian market and corks for the American market, because they believe that a cork denotes a better wine.
Yep, those Americans. Yep.
But there you go. And of course, most of the cork comes from the cork oak tree mostly in Spain and Portugal, and it's becoming less and less available. I think because of some questionable forestry practices over there, but it's actually a renewable resource, because it comes from the bark of the cork oak tree, and that bark regenerates every decade or so. So in that way, it is a renewable resource.
I remember when we were in Portugal, and cork was everywhere. There were belts, there were handbags,
that's right,
everything made out of cork. Granite was everywhere as well, so we felt quite at home. Anyway,
let's have a little taste of it.
Just a quick call out there. Great to see you back, Skippies. Have a nice breakfast over there in London. Jolene, yep. When we first opened the farm shed, all of the Sterling Heights wines had corks, and that took us by surprise too.
And it took us so much by surprise that we opened the farm shed without a corkscrew. So we had to run down to the local hardware and get a corkscrew when we first had to open the Sterling Heights wine. So, we weren't overly prepared for it either. It's... So
Alex has got the chalk in it, I hear. Does that mean he's a school teacher? I was reading the other day about chocolate and wine, and all about cheese and wine, and what I was reading was saying that if the wine was light and refreshing, then so should the if the wine's light and refreshing, so should the cheese be, or so should the chocolate be. Well, I have some chocolate to have tonight. It says that if you're having a really punchy, full-on red wine, you need to have a good, solid, punchy chocolate. What I've got here is from Danvers. Now, Danvers has become... It started with a European guy who came to Tasmania, started making truffles, like these little long ones here, and it's become an iconic brand. But like so many little producers during COVID, they've been hit pretty hard. So if you see any of these in the shops near you. Buy up. They're fantastic, and every sale helps everybody during these strange times that we're living through. So I'm going for a bit of Danvers chocolate with this one.
I presume that everybody else sees these comments too, but Jolene's just told us that there is a cork plantation in Canberra, and I've never known that. So,
wow.
Excellent.
They are tasty, Skippies.
I quite like this Gamay, which would surprise everyone. That I don't think I've ever said that I don't like a wine. But it's lighter than what I thought it would be. I thought it would be bolder, but it's not. It's actually quite a light, and it is a light and fruity wine.
Yes.
I don't get the sort of really big berry flavour in there, but I quite like the lightness of it.
It is. It's kind of unexpected. It's a bit different, like the grape itself. Now, what colour's this grape, Helen?
I can't remember. What did I say it was?
I think you said it was a purple grape.
I think I did. I think I did because I realised that the three wines that we are tasting tonight are actually three different coloured grapes. So
we better get moving.
I'm a bit excited about that.
We better get moving because we are doing three wines. We normally do two, but we're doing three.
Oh, look, Jolene's still making her way through the Grandview cheese box.
Oh, fantastic.
All right, so next one.
that Sterling Heights, 5 acres, 1 tonne of grapes, very small producer, prolific in their activity up there, and makes he really loves making blends of unusual grapes. So we've had one in the farm shed from them called Aromatique, which is a blend of 3 different white grapes, which is just really interesting. So yeah, really interesting wines.
Yeah, and it's lovely to deal with Jeff and Jenny up there at Sterling Heights. So hello to them, just in case you watch it.
So we're going to pop back down to Freycinet Peninsula now.
Yep.
Over there on Freycinet Peninsula, if you've been here and gone down to Freycinet National Park and Wineglass Bay, you would have driven past a resort which was established by Nick Johnston's parents back in, I think, the early 80s. And they were very much ahead of their time. The style and design of this place still stands the test of time, and it's a gorgeous spot. It was built before Freycinet was, known worldwide as it is now, and Wineglass Bay, way before Wineglass Bay was rated one of the 10 best beaches in the world by Condé Nast. Anyway, over there at the edge of the bay, they have a restaurant, and Nick, who's the current managing generation, wanted something different to serve in the restaurant. So he started making some wine specifically to make in the restaurant. He started in 2013 with 3 tonnes of grapes. Now, Over the Edge is one of 2 that make but don't grow. So they're a winery but not a vineyard. Remember last week, Freycinet, Vigneron, Vintner, maker, grower and maker on the premises. Young Claudio Redenti there, one of the most highly acclaimed winemakers in the region, one of the most iconic brands. Anyway, so in 2014, after his first couple of vintages and selling wine in the restaurant for a couple of years, he purchased a hydraulic press, basket press, which enabled him to increase production, and he maintains an ever-increasing commitment to old-school approach. So basket press, gravity-fed. I know he was telling me, when things warm up, he pushes it into the cool room. When it gets too cool in there, he pushes it out manually. So very hands-on, very minimal intervention. Means that the grape quality really varies from year to year and has a big difference in the wine that's produced, which is really interesting. People often will say, oh gosh, this is really different to the vintage that I had before. And that's a good sign. It shows you that they're small and they're responding to the quality of the grape that year. 1 year they can get 8 tonne and they make a lot of wine. The next year they can get 2 tonne per hectare and they make less wine, but it's much more intense. So if you get that variation from vintage to vintage, it shows that they're doing minimal intervention and they're really letting the grapes reflect the climate and the conditions of that year. So, moving right along to 2016, Di Aldis of Hurly Burley fame, who we have spoken about before, came on board in the shared winery and brought with a bit more equipment, which enabled them to up their production to 22 tonnes, including 7 tonnes for Over the Edge. So this is one of the wines that came out of that expanded production, and it's a Petit Verdot.
So the 2 wines that we're doing, and usually we only do 2 wines a week, but this week, because we originally said that we were going to do the Over the Edge Cabernet, that's what we've sent off to Jolene there in Canberra. So she's got the Cabernet that she's tasting. But in fact, we
had planned to do the Petit Verdot, and it was a bit hard to get
the other way around. Yeah.
So sorry about this, Jolene, but we're going to get to the Cabernet in a minute, and they're quite similar and very, very similar in origin.
But what's also interesting is that earlier on we tasted the Bend Cabernet Sauvignon, and the grapes that go into that blended. We did that about 3 weeks ago, I think.
Classic Bordeaux blend.
The blend is the Cabernet Sauvignon, the Petit Verdot, Cabernet,
Cab Franc,
Cab
Merlot.
and Merlot.
Yeah.
So these grapes are the grapes that go in. These actual grapes are the grapes that go into making the Bend, and they're actually grown at the Bend. So Nick has pulled them out separately, said, I want to make a Petit Verdot, I want to make a Cabernet, and because I want to experiment and I want to know what they're like just by themselves without being blended.
Yeah. So it's not all that common to get 100% Petit Verdot. It's generally put into the classic Bordeaux blend with less than 5% of the mix. And in the 2 that we have, Craigino and the Bend Bordeaux blends, it's about 3%. So...
and I guess the role that the Petit Verdot plays in that blend is actually to soften up the Cabernet, because sometimes the Cabernet can be quite big and rich in tannins and give it some edges, and the Petit Verdot will actually smooth that out.
Now this is an interesting grape. It ripens very late, so some years in Bordeaux it may not ripen at all or produce such poor quality grapes that it's not worth the effort. However, in good years, the late ripening is the very attribute that nurtures the ugly duckling into the beautiful swan. So,
you're such a poet.
Well, I like that. Ugly duckling, beautiful black swan.
Yeah.
So the late ripening is actually a great advantage in countries like Australia, Chile, South Africa, Spain and the USA, where there are significant plantings. And it's actually getting talked up quite a bit in Australia by enthusiasts of it.
But there's not a lot of it grown in Australia, is there? And the Bend... what's his name? The Bend, I've lost it.
Howard
at the Bend is one of the few growers, and what he says is because it really needs a warm climate. That's why not much is grown in Tasmania. He sort of has a bit of a microclimate down there at the Bend, and it can get stinking hot on some days. He says.
In fact, he lost a whole year's grapes because it reached 50 degrees in one January day, and they just shriveled.
So apparently it's perfect to be growing some Petit Verdot, and that's what he does, and that's what he puts into his blend, and he's obviously sold some to Nick to make. So let's have a shot of it, because I think it's going to be a nice soft.
Now, it can be medium-bodied or a full-bodied. It can have... it's a bit like the Gamay again, in that it can have 2 different characteristics, whether it's aged or not. And again, we've got a 2015, so... When it's young, you get violets, but when it's aged, it takes on all the secondary fruit flavours of Christmas cake and plum pudding, sweet beetroot. And in fact, the flavour profile can mimic a Shiraz. So
I quite like the idea of the sweet beetroot. I think I'm getting a bit of that. Very, very smooth, very soft,
Oh, yeah.
very rounded.
I don't see anything wrong with that grape on its own.
Not big in like it's not a full-on flavour.
It's gentle.
It's really gentle. It's elegant.
It's
I like it a lot.
It is elegant.
I don't think there's enough in Tasmania to do it, much of it, just on its own, and that's why it's used mainly as a blend. There's a vineyard up in the north called Grey Sands, who grow a Petit Verdot, and they put it into a blend up there. I don't think they have a. I'm pretty sure they don't have a Petit Verdot.
Thanks, Jolene. Glad you're enjoying it. Yeah, I have to have another Danvers chocolate with this.
Okay.
Oh my.
Was that good, that one? Or was that with that?
Yeah. Danvers, look. Danvers chocolates. Beautiful Tasmanian product. Sent lots of places. If you see any, buy some. Give them a hand during COVID.
That is nice. That is nice. Let's move on to the Cabernet.
We are going to move on to the Cabernet because it's another very interesting grape.
Oh, the thing about the Petit Verdot, I forgot to say, because we were talking about colour of grapes. Petit Verdot actually translates as little green one. And that's because it takes so long to ripen. And it takes so long to ripen that sometimes it never actually turns purple. So it ends up being harvested as a green grape. But, when it is ripe, it is a purple grape. So we're going to move on to the Cabernet, which is actually a black grape.
Yes. Now, all of these grapes, as Helen said, came from the Bend. So we've tasted them previously in the Bend Cab Sav. But what can you tell us about the Cabernet grape, Helen?
Oh, I'm not sure what I can tell you about the Cabernet grape.
I think you were telling me before that it was not a clone, it was a...
No, it's a hybrid.
It predates...
No, the Cabernet is... No, the Cabernet...
A hybrid, that's right, yeah.
No, the Cabernet Sauvignon is actually a hybrid of a Cabernet grape and the Sauvignon Blanc grape. And then they were put together way back when in France to make the Cabernet Sauvignon. So the Cab Sav is actually a grape, but it's made up of... This is dad and Sauvignon Blanc is mum. Could be the other way around, not sure.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Any way you look at it, it's a blending of black and white grapes, which makes a beautiful
That's right.
product.
Which surprised me. I didn't realise it was No, the Cab Sav is a blending of black and white grapes. Starting with the Cabernet.
So it's got similar body to the Petit Verdot. It's made by the same person. It's the same year, but quite a different flavour.
The softness isn't there. The softness is with the Petit Verdot.
It's punchy.
It could be a little harsh, actually. You need to, if you want to eat something with that, I reckon you need to go big.
Absolutely.
I think you need if you're into eating meat, I think you need a nice juicy barbecued steak.
Spare ribs, kinda.
Or a beef bourguignon, something like that. If you're not eating meat, then a nice, a really hearty mushroom risotto or a mushroom stew would be fantastic, I reckon. But something hearty, to complement the heartiness of the Cabernet.
Or a beautiful dark Danvers chocolate in the shape of a wine barrel.
Yeah, all that. What's inside that?
Oh, yum.
Here, can I have... I'll have that.
Yeah, okay. So
Thank you.
We've raved on for longer than we planned to, as usual. But, yeah, ugly ducklings grow into beautiful black swans. And with these grapes, one from Bordeaux, the Petit Verdot from Bordeaux, and the Gamay from Beaujolais, and Sicily, I think. Some very nice wines coming out of our smallest producers on the East Coast. This This Cabernet, 252 bottles produced.
Petit Verdot.
Petit Verdot, 252 bottles. Around the same amount for the 504 bottles of the Cabernet. And he's also got a Cab Franc Merlot, which he's done 564 bottles of.
So there's not a lot.
No, very small. And Sterling Heights, even smaller. So, where are we going next week, Helen?
Next week we are visiting our friends right here in Bicheno,
Yep.
called McLean Bay. We're doing this will be next week will be the only week that we're doing a sparkling wine. So we're doing a sparkling rosé and we're
Because
doing
it's
a
going
Pinot.
to be spring.
That's right. We're celebrating spring next week. And yeah, so sparkling and Pinot from McLean Bay next Thursday, 5:00.
Yep.
On this station.
Just going to close off a little toast to Charles Alexander Mead, my
Yep.
dad. We've had many a good red wine with him. Vale Charles.
Vale Charlie.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next week.
Yeah. Bye for now.